because however you answer a question when it comes to evangelism practice, you must direct them to the Bible, even if that person is not a believer. Because ultimately, only when they come to the Bible, this journey will begin. If they don't come to the Bible and you're talking about some worldly philosophy, or if you're overly dwelling on philosophical arguments, you are not going to win that soul for Jesus. You must bring them to the Word of God, bring them to the Bible. It's okay. You can sit down.
The question is, what is the history of Baal? How Baal came into existence? Baal God, उसका अस्तित्व कहाँ से, उसका इतिहास क्या है?
The existence, the history of how Baal came into existence is not quarter as important as the fact that the Bible stresses. The Bible never talks about Baal coming into existence, but the closest you can get to the origin of Baal is Numbers 25. Numbers 25, you read the full chapter. I believe the word Baal occurs there, where the children of Israel indulged in Baal worship. And you remember my message. I'm not going to tell you the theology of Baal. So more than the origin of Baal, you need to understand that understand the theology of Baal, which will help you understand why the people of Israel went into idolatry and adultery, two twin sins. And more important than all that is your personal life and my personal life. And we should be concerned that we should be careful that we don't go into idolatry and we don't go into adultery. Idolatry, the last verse of 1 John says, children, keep yourself from idols. That was written for believers. The last verse of 1 John 5, and you find the last verse there. Why? Because even believers like us can get into idol worship through our cell phone worship, or through a relationship worship, human relationship worship, or any gadget worship. So we need to keep away from idols, and we need to keep away from sexual sin. That is more important than dwelling on all those things. Hebrews chapter 12 says, look at Jesus, the author and finisher of your life. Turn your attention on Jesus, not on Baal 24/7. Not on some false god 24/7. Your focus, your passion, your meditation, your devotion is on Jesus and Jesus alone. That's what the Bible tells us in Hebrews chapter 12 verse 1.
Why do people reject transgender people who are born into this gender? What Bible says about transgender?
Okay, let's read that from the Word of God. Can I have a volunteer to hold this for me? Okay, turn with me to Matthew 19. Matthew 19 and verse 12. There are eunuchs who are born that way, which means there are people who are born without certain sexual organs. There are eunuchs who are born that way. Jesus talks about that. There are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by others. Bible scholars say Daniel was one of them. That's why Daniel did not choose to get married. We don't read about Daniel's wife. Why? Because the enemies of the people of Israel, many nations, castrated prisoners of war. And Daniel was a prisoner of war. So they castrated the Hebrew men, they captured, so that they will not get into marriage relationship and only focus on working for the king, working for the pagan king. So thank you. Alright, so there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by others. And thirdly, there are the third kind of eunuchs. There are those who choose to live like eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. We are in a Catholic facility. You know that many Catholic fathers do not choose to get married. So there is some scriptural basis for that. The Bible doesn't say that pastors can't get married, but you can choose not to get married because you give all your time for Bible reading and prayer and gospel preaching and so on and so forth. So these are the three ways by which you can become a eunuch or a eunuch. But the fourth way that the world is now promoting, that you think you look like you are a boy because of you have certain sexual organs, but you tell yourself you're a girl. Now those things the Bible does not recommend. Only these three categories are there. People who are born that way, people who are made that way, people who choose to be that way. But the Bible doesn't talk about a fourth category where a boy thinks he's a girl and a girl thinks he's a boy, and they go on to do some medical surgery. You must accept yourself the way God made you. If God gave you a certain set of sexual organs, be content. In fact, contentment is a principle where is a virtue that the gospel right that the apostles placed a lot of premium on. Be content. Search, download an online Bible, ESV Bible app is one app you use. Type the word contentment. There are so many verses talking about the need for the believer to have contentment. So if God has made you a girl, and we know you're a girl because of you have certain private parts which a girl has. If God made you a boy and we know you're a boy because of certain private parts you have, be content with that. Don't listen to the music of the world that tells you feel that way. The danger of that is one day I might wake up and say, I might be 70 years old, Duke Jeyaraj will be 70 years old, and I might say, well, I feel I must have sexual relationship with 5 12-year-old girls because I think God made me that way. You'll start throwing stones at me. In fact, if you start saying crazy things like I have a man's body but I feel like a female, there is no limit to what you can say. So even pedophilia will be okay, or even animal sex will be okay. And in fact, there are people who practice all this nonsense and all this gross immorality. So we need to stick to the Bible. Only 3 categories of eunuchs, and the 4th category doesn't exist.
So the question is now, is the eternal question, is dating before marriage right? The same you are marrying as well as different, age 20, 25.
When you're still in school, when you're in college, as the Bible says in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, there's a time for everything. There's a time to love. The context of Ecclesiastes chapter 3 is time for romantic love. And I believe the time for romantic love would be when your parents start talking about your marriage, thereabout, and talking about dating. I would tell you to be very careful when it comes to dating, or I would actually tell you not to date the way the world dates. Okay, the world goes. You go for dinner with a boy one weekend, another boy the next weekend, another one girl one weekend. They go on serial dating. But if you want to know the person whom you are thinking of marrying, meet that person in a place, either in your home or the girl's home, in the presence of elders. Have a short conversation, have a brief conversation. I even do not think that long phone calls will ever make a difference, because even that way you really can't get to know a person. All this robs you of the thrill that God has for you post-marriage. So, and also you must remember, marriage is a step of faith. You marry a believer. I said marry a believer, zealous for you, zealous for Jesus, as you are zealous for Jesus. If you're coming in for ministry especially. But beyond that, it's a step of faith. So then marriage becomes super thrilling as you start to discover each other. If you're spending hours talking with each other, and then of course from the Bible we know sexual touching is no, and that would be a sin against God. So it leads to that. In fact, if you talk hours with a girl and start touching that girl, there is a frustration a boy feels. Because God has wired us that way. So God wired us that we get married and we have night after night after night. There are some couples who are married for 50 years. My parents celebrated 50th wedding anniversary. You have thousands of nights to talk. Long hours. But now, I would say keep it brief, keep it to the point. Okay, and even if you have to talk in front of elders around you, then you will be safe. Then there will be less heartbreak or no heartbreak.
तो हिंदी में ये उससे जुड़ा हुआ एक सवाल है। तो हम अपने जीवन साथी के बारे में कैसे जान सकते हैं? प्रार्थना का उत्तर हम कैसे प्राप्त कर सकते हैं?
Translate. Yeah. Okay. The Bible says in Luke chapter 6 verse 12.
लूका 6 और 12 में कहता है,
Jesus spent the night praying to God.
यीशु मसीह ने पूरी रात प्रार्थना की।
And the next day he chose his 12 disciples.
उसके बाद अगले दिन 12 शिष्यों को चुना।
How will you choose your life partner?
आप अपने जीवन साथी को कैसे चुनेंगे?
You know you must marry a believer. 1 Corinthians 7:39.
पहला कुरिन्थी 7:39 जानते हैं आपके विश्वासी से शादी करनी।
You know you have to marry a believer. Genesis 24. Abraham went to a community of faith to search as Abraham sent Eliezer to the community of faith to get a girl for his son Isaac.
इसहाक के शादी के लिए आप जानते हैं उत्पत्ति 24 के अंदर अब्राहम ने एक विश्वास करने वाले समाज के वहां पर एलियाजर को भेजा ताकि वहां से एक लड़की को ले आए।
But if you're a boy, there are many believer girls out there.
लेकिन अगर आप एक लड़के हैं, बहुत सारी लड़कियां हैं जो विश्वासी हैं।
Sarah is a believer.
सारा बिलीवर है।
Susan is a believer.
सुसन बिलीवर है।
Sandra is a believer.
सैंड्रा बिलीवर।
How do you choose between Sarah, Susan, and Sandra?
इन सब में से कैसे चॉइस करें?
Go into a time of prayer.
तो आपको प्रार्थना में समय
You know, when I remember when I had a short list of 5 or 6 girls who I thought I could marry, all of them were believers, all of them were reasonably on fire for God. I walked to the eucalyptus jungles opposite to Southern Asia Bible College, where I was studying at that time, second year of marriage. My parents were already talking about proposals that I received, and I would pace the eucalyptus gardens up and down and pray about this matter.
मेरा समय था जब मेरे को लगा ऐसे 5-6 ऐसे हो सकते हैं जिसके साथ शादी हो सकती है। तो मेरा बाइबल कॉलेज के पीछे काफी जंगल था उस समय पर, वहां जाकर काफी समय में प्रार्थना में समय बिता रहा था।
And from that list of 5 names, God helped write this name in my heart. James 1:1-121, if I remember right. James chapter 1 verse 21 says, God implants a word. You know, God implants something in our heart, and that was Evangeline, my wife. And after which I wrote to her, she took her time, she played hard to get, she said yes, and now we are married.
और उसके बाद काफी प्रार्थना के बाद मेरे को लगता है याकूब उसका 1 और 21 में लिखा है कि परमेश्वर अपने वचन को हमारे दिल में रखता है। तो ऐसे इवेंजलिन, ये उनकी पत्नी है अभी, जो उसका नाम रखा, उसको फिर लिखा और फिर उसने काफी समय लिया सोचने के लिए, और उसके बाद जो है शादी तय हुई।
And there is another way you find which girl to marry.
और एक और तरीका है,
You are a believer, she is a believer, you are on fire for God, she is on fire for God.
आप बिलीवर हैं, वो भी बिलीवर हैं, दोनों प्रभु के लिए प्रज्वलित हैं।
And you propose in marriage to her directly, which is recommended, or through elders, which is also fine.
जो आप उसको प्रपोज करते हैं या अपने वडीलों के द्वारा उनसे बात करते हैं।
Both of you are of marriageable age.
और आप दोनों शादी की उम्र के हैं।
If she says no,
अगर ना कहती है,
don't feel bad.
तो खराब मत लगाइए।
Because God, who knows the end from the beginning, has made her to say no.
क्योंकि परमेश्वर जो अंत को पहले से जानता है, उसने उससे ना कहलवाया।
Isaiah 46 and verse 10, God knows the end from the beginning. So He knows what could happen if you marry that girl. Right now, with your limited knowledge, you're thinking you should marry that girl, but God has made that girl say no. So take it in your stride and learn to move on. Don't think that, I have pimples on my face, I am short, I am fat, and nobody likes me in this world. Learn to move on. You are beautifully and wonderfully made, and God has a plan for you. God has got a girl for you. God has got a boy for you. In His time, He will make everything beautiful.
तो तो यशायाह 46 के 10 में लिखा है कि परमेश्वर अंत को शुरुआत से जानता है, तो उसने अंत को पहले जानने की वजह से उसके मुंह से ना कहलवाया होगा। तो फिर आपको ये सोचने की जरूरत नहीं कि मैं मोटा हूँ, मैं नाटा हूँ, मेरा पिंपल है, इसलिए कोई मुझे पसंद नहीं करता है। ऐसे मायूसी में जाने की जरूरत नहीं है कि परमेश्वर के हित के लिए आप इंतजार कीजिए कि जो जीवन साथी परमेश्वर ने आपके लिए रखा है उसके साथ आपकी शादी होगी। How can we talk to our generation about sexual sin? Where to start? Where to start?
Okay, when you talk about sexual sin to your unbeliever friends,
अगर आप लैंगिक पाप के बारे में अपने गैर मसीही दोस्तों से बांटते हैं,
your approach should be different when you, versus your approach when you talk about sexual sins to believers.
तो आपका जो अप्रोच है वो अलग होगा, और मसीहियों से बात करते हो गैर मसीहियों से बात करते हो में आपका अप्रोच अलग
So
होगा।
if they say they are watching porn, they say they are sleeping with, having an affair with a married woman.
अगर वो कहते हैं कि भाई एक शादीशुदा औरत के साथ मेरा अफेयर है या वो पोर्न देख रहे हैं, ऐसा कुछ है,
Don't look at their face and say, that my brother is a sin and you will land in hell and fry there forever and forever.
और आप उसके मुंह पर देख के ये मत कहें कि वो मेरे भाई सबसे बड़ा पाप है और आप नरक में जाओगे, वहां पे जलोगे सदा के लिए, ऐसा मत बोलो।
Understand that, you say that, there is a vacuum in our heart.
उसे कहें कि एक हमारे दिल में, हर एक के दिल में एक वैक्यूम है,
And that to fill that vacuum we choose many ways.
और उस वैक्यूम को भरने के लिए हम अलग अलग चीजों का इस्तेमाल करते हैं।
And perhaps you're searching for the plugging of that vacuum through the sexual relationship outside of marriage.
तो आपके दिल का खालीपन को दूर करने के लिए आप कोई एक तरीका ढूंढ रहे हो,
But-
आपके विवाह के बाहर आप सेक्स कर रहे हो या ऐसा कुछ कर रहे हो।
But because and you say, may I quote a verse from the Bible? Because we understand from the Bible in John 10:10, I have Jesus' words, I have come to give life to the full. All these things will not give fulfillment. Only one thing will give fulfillment, and that is a relationship with Jesus. That we start turning from sin, coming to the foot of the cross, receiving His forgiveness that comes through His blood, and starting a relationship with Jesus. What you should say is, may I quote to you a verse from the Bible, John 10:10.
यूहन्ना 10 और 10 का एक वचन मैं आपको याद दिलाता हूं।
John 10:10 says, records the words of Jesus, I have come to give you life to the full.
मैं आपको जीवन देने आया हूँ, बहुतायत का जीवन देने आया हूँ।
And what will truly and totally give fulfillment to our life is when we turn from sin and come to Jesus, who died for us on the cross, who shed His blood for us on the cross, and ask for His cleansing. Then that vacuum will be fulfilled, not through these sexual experiences.
और आपके दिल के खालीपन को पूरा करने के लिए आपको उस क्रूस के पास आना पड़ेगा, माफी मांगनी पड़ेगी और उद्धार पाना पड़ेगा, तब सही में वो खालीपन पूरा होगा, और ये बाकी सारी चीजों से आपका खालीपन पूरा नहीं होगा।
And that is the thing that we learned from John chapter 4.
और यूहन्ना 4 के अंदर भी वही बात हम सीखते हैं।
That's how Jesus shared the gospel with the Samaritan woman.
जब सामरी स्त्री के साथ यीशु मसीह बात
What
करते
he
हैं,
was basically saying is, you can drink the water of sex, but you will thirst again. You can have multiple relationships. Husband number 1, husband number 2. Jesus made us confess that. Husband number 1, husband number 2, husband number 3, husband number 4, husband number 5. Now living in. But you can drink the water of sex. You will be thirsty again. But if you drink me or have a relationship with me, you will never thirst again. That's the approach we take when we share the gospel. When we talk about sexual matters with unbelievers.
जैसे यीशु ने कहा उस सामरी स्त्री को, तुम सेक्स का वो जल जो है बार बार पी सकते हो, पहला पति, दूसरा पति, आखिरी पति, वो बार बार पी सकते हो, वापस फिर से प्यास लगेगा, लेकिन जीवन का जल पिएंगे तो प्यास नहीं लगेगा। और उसी तरह से आप अपने गैर मसीही दोस्तों के साथ बात करते हैं।
मैं जीवन का मसीहा, I am the living water. When you have a relationship with me, then you will not thirst again.
अब यीशु के साथ रिश्ता होगा तो वो जीवन का जल है, फिर दोबारा प्यास नहीं लगेगा।
Thank you. Thank you.